Alright, Suffolk County Disrespected Dad here once again. I'm going to play a recording between CArleen Thorn, one of the assistant directors of Suffolk County CPS, and myself, made on January 9th of 2014 in regards to why CPS has withdrawn a petition to go unsupervised visitation. And this is the recording.
Hello, this is Duncan.
Hi, Duncan. It's CArleen Thorn. How are you?
Hi, Miss Thorn. How you doing?
Good. Kim asked me to call you back and see, what's going on.
I want to set up a meeting with everybody. I want to discuss the recent events. I want to discuss what's going to go on with the case. I want to discuss everything that's been transpired recently.
Okay, well, Kim wouldn't be participating in that kind of meeting. That would be, Christopher and his supervisor and possibly me, depending on, sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, depending on circumstances, but Kim generally wouldn't be part of that.
I spoke with Chris today about what went down today in court, being that the county had withdrawn the petition to go unsupervised.
Right.
Okay. I don't know, whose decision that was. I don't know where that came about.
Okay.
But that's part of what I want to discuss. And Chris really doesn't have anything to do with that.
Well, I can discuss that with you if you like. That's not a problem. We can have it in an official meeting, or we can talk about it now.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I would do an official meeting because even if it's just between you and me, but I also know that Judge Whalen called you guys.
Right.
I don't know if Judge Whalen spoke directly to you, spoke directly to Kim Sodergram, or spoke directly to Dennis Nowak. I believe she spoke to Dennis Nowak, but that's also the conversation I'd like to have, because honestly, CArleen, this just goes to show that everything I've said from day one is true. Okay.
Well, you used poor judgment. You just did, and regardless of what you did or what your motivation was or whatever it was, it really probably was poor judgment.
Now, mind you, family court is about the parent-child relationship, and anything that goes on outside of the presence of a child is pretty much doesn't matter, if with certain limitations, obviously. But if you are conducting yourself in an appropriate manner with other adults, regardless of whether they are a judge or not, and there's no laws broken, it should not affect your child family court case with CPS. However, as you listen to the remainder of this recording, you will realize that that's exactly what takes place. And it should be noted that CArleen Thorn has no actual knowledge of any phone call that has taken place between anybody, although she does allege several times that the judge did not ask them or her to take any action. But she is the person, she never spoke to the judge directly. And it should also be noted that a person in the position of a judge making a phone call as a judge with respect to any incident carries the full weight of the office of judge behind the phone call. So whether or not something was actually stated, which we don't know, to take reprisal or punishment has no true effect on the actions of CPS, other than the fact the phone call itself being made by a family court judge is the request for an action being taken. What are you going to do to punish this person for coming to my house? Who do they think they are? Are you going to let this person or anybody go to a judge's house? Make an example out of them. Without requesting it, that is exactly what that phone call means.
And sometimes, people react to things that are done in poor judgment. And, honestly, we did withdraw that petition based on the fact that you're demonstrating that poor judgment at this point. but we did walk away. When I filed that petition, I really didn't expect the court to give you the unsupervised because I know how the court has felt all along. But I thought as long as we got an order that allowed for more liberal planning of the supervised visitation in the community, that was a step forward. Ultimately, that's what we ended up with, so we really accomplished that goal, which is a step forward. And if those visitation situations go well, my understanding is that the maternal grandfather has been supervising or had supervised some of your visits. He's reporting good things as well. If we can get him to supervise some more of the visits, that would be great because it would be an outside opinion, outside of DSS, that hopefully would be reporting good things about your interaction with your son, and continue to make steps forward. But unfortunately, without that mental health evaluation and demonstrating poor judgment, it did cause concern with some of the parties, especially those that don't really know you, what have you, that they felt it was necessary to withdraw that petition at this point in time, and see how things go.
But CArleen, I honestly want to get down to the bottom of this. For a judge, whether I go to her house or not, okay, with no crime being committed, no threat being made, to call you guys and whatever she asked of you, to ask of you.
She didn't ask us to do anything. She just told us what had happened. She didn't make a decision to withdraw that petition. That wouldn't be appropriate. She didn't ask us to withdraw that petition. That wouldn't be appropriate. But she did, however, explain to us what transpired, and that caused enough concern because of the poor judgment with the lack of the mental health evaluation that the decision was made to, be a little bit more cautious at this point, and just do the community-based supervised visitation, but to try and get the order that allowed for more options, so you're not just tied into fun for all. And actually, Christopher and I spoke about it earlier this week, with it being winter and less outdoor options and some of the things that you could do with your visits. And, you do really have a lot of options. You have 4 hours, so, you can go to the movie and lunch.
No, I get that.
There's lots and lots of things you can do.
I get that.
The more types of situations that we see you with your son and we report that it's going well, or the grandfather sees you and your son and reports it's going well, that all works in your favor towards the next step, hopefully some unsupervised. There's been a change in judge now, so that's another piece of the puzzle that might change how things are looked at. I don't know, but unfortunately, regardless of why you went to the judge's house, that's not for me to say, because I was there. I don't know what you did or what you said or how you. I was just
Now, we just heard her stating how many times visitation is good and what the purpose of the order was to get more visitation and everything else. This was January 9th. The unsupervised visitation petition was withdrawn. Shortly afterwards, I believe it was on April 4th or 5th, there was a motion to have visitation completely taken out of the community. As she just stated, she wanted to have more community-based visitation. This was just prior to my incarceration. Now there is a motion for termination of visitation. So the contradiction is how great everything is and how great visitation is, but now we are looking to terminate visitation completely with no behavior between my child and I having any misconduct whatsoever. Everything has been positive from day one. Anyway, we'll continue the recording.
That you went there, regardless of why you did it, in retrospect, you have to realize it was really probably poor judgment. And I appreciate what you're saying, that you felt like you were trying to make amends, but there were lots of ways to make amends outside of knocking on her door on Thanksgiving.
CArleen, here's my biggest problem. You're telling me that CPS CPS felt it was adequate to withdraw the petition due to the fact that I went to her house. Well, are you now saying that CPS has changed their position and that unsupervised visitation isn't warranted at this time?
Well, what I'm saying is that the CPS position at this point is that we'd prefer to just slow it down a little bit, be a little bit more cautious, continue to watch your interactions, have you do the mental health evaluation, just to hopefully confirm what we have believed to be the case all along, that you're not really a threat to your son, but, the mental health piece is really going to be integral in moving your situation forward.
Can you explain to me how me going to a judge's house and not making a single threat whatsoever and condoning my behavior in an appropriate manner into, and making what was a peace offering, how that would suggest in any manner that I'm a danger to my child? Because that's what you're insinuating.
Well, what I'm saying to you is that I'm not insinuating you are a danger to your child. I'm just saying that our position, your court order has required you to have a mental health evaluation. You've resisted that. We tried to go to bat for you on that, and we tried to go and say, well, we see him with Devin, and his interactions with Devin seem to be appropriate, and it seems to be fine, and that, we could probably move forward without that mental health evaluation. That is an out-of-the-box type of thinking. We don't typically do that. The courts don't normally see us do that situation. And so that's why I think the court was quite taken back. You were there that day that I testified. Judge Kelly didn't like that position. He didn't like what I had to say because it is not the norm. Usually we have a set of mandates. We expect someone to do X, Y, and Z before we move forward. And this situation was really an out-of-the-box type of thinking. Now, in this particular situation, when you went to the judge's house, I'm not saying you did anything threatening, but for a person in a position of authority like a judge who has a history with you, had whatever she had between you, ended up removed from your case, to have you show up at her house with flowers on Thanksgiving, just by virtue of you being on her doorstep, she could have viewed that as threatening, even if you didn't act in a threatening manner, just by the history, just by the nature of, the things that had transpired before, just by nature of the fact that she had that relationship with you where she was judging you as a parent on some level, or your ability to parent your child could have been viewed by her in a threatening manner. Now, you're saying to me that you went to extend an olive branch, and I want to respect that that's your position, but in retrospect, you can't tell me that you can't look back and see how maybe someone could have viewed that in a threatening manner just by virtue of the whole situation. Now, I'm not...
So now we're supposed to look back in retrospect and say that somebody could have viewed it in a threatening manner. Not that they did, not that it was, but somebody could have viewed it in a threatening manner, and that's justification for all other actions by CPS to this point.
I will agree with you that, yes, by virtue of what she knows she has done with me in my case, that, yes, she could take me being there, just whether it's an olive branch, whether showing up for any reason.
I prefer, I know you, I've met with you, I've talked to you. I prefer to say, Duncan, use poor judgment. I do. But given the fact that it could have been threatening, we don't really know what your motivation was.
No, we actually do know what the motivation is. I can play the tape for you.
So there is a tape that exists, and that will be added to the video collection here shortly. But I will concede, as I did in the recording, that yes, with the history between Ms. Whalen, the Honorable Teresa Whalen, and myself, with all of her involvement in my case, with all of the things she has requested to be done to me because of the way she was recused, as cited in a previous video, she shouldn't even be a judge in a family court matter. However, it was not threatening. That's the biggest thing. And the recording will be played in the next video posting here shortly.
That's not a problem. But regardless of that, I would still like to set up a meeting with you, and I actually would like Dennis Nowak to be involved possibly, because it is my understanding...
That's not something that he does. Dennis is not going to meet with you, and Kim's not going to meet with you.
You know what, then I'm going to call them up, call Dennis up directly, because it's to my understanding that Judge Whalen called Dennis Nowak directly, and it is my understanding that she she asked if there was something that could be done about my case. And we need to clear this up before we go any further, because I think it's highly prejudicial judicially for a judge to call up you guys and ask them anything about a case that she's no longer involved in.
I can tell you that I was involved in the meetings to make the decision on what we were going to do with your petition, and it was never ever said that Judge Whalen asked us to do anything one way or another. So just because it turned out a certain way does not in any way, shape, or form suggest that Judge Whalen told us to do that. It was an effort that was made between us and our county attorney, and the situation and the history and the lack of the psychiatric piece that you haven't done yet. You can certainly invite Dennis to any meeting you want. I would be very surprised if he shows up. That is not what he does. That is why he has, people below him that he delegates those responsibilities to. But I'm also telling you, Duncan, that you really need to think before you act, because you didn't think before you made the action of showing up at Judge Whalen's.
Okay, so this part of the recording starts to go into me having to think about my actions and whether or not I want to pursue exposing what CPS has done, what actions Judge Whalen has taken since I appeared at her house, and the threats made about the actions that will be taken if I pursue my line of defending my position as a father, as a parent who was not threatening in any way or fashion to anybody, and all of the conduct with my son being 100% appropriate, with defending this action and with questioning the people who are in a more authoritative position than myself to make decisions for my child. There's a significant idle threats of repercussions for pursuing this line, and here it is now. This recording was January of 2014. I served 10 months in jail for a violation of probation in criminal court, in which my probation officer lied on the stand, and there's actually will be a recording of the actual conduct between him and I on the day that he alleges the conduct that I did in the future. But this next few minutes is about how I should think about what I'm going to do and whether or not I really want to pursue my request to, as Miss Thorn put it, request an audience or demand an audience with Dennis Nowak. Basically coming down to an idle threat or a suggestion of, if you pursue this, there's going to be consequences. And as you just heard, and I will rewind it slightly so you can hear it clearly from that point on, exactly the remainder of this conversation.
And it worked against the Whalen, maybe, but I'm all below him. That is the psychiatric piece that you haven't done yet. You can certainly invite Dennis to any meeting you want. I would be very surprised if he shows up. That is not what he does. That is why he has, people below him that he delegates those responsibilities to. But I'm also telling you, Duncan, that you really need to think before you act, because you didn't think before you made the action of showing up at Judge Whalen's, and it worked against you. So you really need to think before you act, because being reactive to something that you don't like is not always in your best interest, and is not always in the best interest of making positive progress towards regaining an open relationship with your son that would be outside of the scope of CPS and family court. I am happy to meet with you. I'll meet with you anytime. I don't have a problem with that. Christopher will meet with you, and his supervisor will meet with you. But you really need to think before you start calling people up who are up the chain of command and demanding that they give you audience so you can question them on their decision making. They have the authority to make decisions, and that's why they're in those positions. And really, I've explained to you, I think, very nicely why the decision was made. You can see how it might have been viewed as threatening, and if you can see how it might have been viewed as threatening, then you certainly are smart enough to against yourself.
Well,
So,
CArleen, I'm just saying, I believe you have the input from Teresa Whalen, whatever that input may have been, that went directly to Mr. Nowak. And I think that if Mr. Nowak was able to sit in on a meeting and actually hear the recorded conversation of what actually took place between Ms. Whalen and myself, I believe that that would appease and put to rest any concerns that you guys have.
if you want to give me a copy of that recording, I will give it to him. But I'm telling you that if you go calling up people and demanding they come to a meeting with you, you're going to be your own worst enemy.
I'm simply requesting it.
I'm sorry?
I'm not demanding it, I'm just simply requesting it. If he chooses not to, it doesn't mean that the meeting can't go forward with you and
and that's fine. I mean, you know what, I can, on the same token, I can let him know that we're having a meeting and that you would like him to be there. I'm just telling you that you really have to think about it before you act, because I don't want to see you, slip further backward. We've come a long way. We've made some progress. We've seen a lot of good, positive things from you. So I really want you to think before you act, because, early on in your case, Duncan, honestly, I wasn't involved with you, but I knew who you were. Everybody knew who Duncan was, because Duncan didn't always think before he acted, and you've come a long way in that area, so I just don't want to see you make...
What are we talking about? Way back when Dawn Mancoff got arrested for beating up her husband, and I called up Ken Sonogram and told her point blank what I was going to do?
No, not even that. I'm saying it were just things that you didn't always think before you acted, that you came across a little bit differently, things you've learned a little bit in your involvement on how to work a little bit better with us and do things a little bit better. So I don't want to see you. I just don't want to see you go ahead and start reacting to something and doing further.
Well, I'm not reacting. I'm trying to nip it in the butt before it goes too far.
But just by virtue of the fact that you think Dennis owes you an explanation when I'm giving you one, Duncan, really shows that you are confusing the roles here.
Well, no, actually, CArleen, I don't believe that. I'm not saying it owes me an explanation. I'm not saying it owes me an explanation. What I'm saying is that he is where the buck stops. The fact that you guys had a meeting which he was involved in, okay, due to this incident between Ms. Whalen and myself, and the fact that she called you.
The county attorney was involved in it too. Are you going to demand that they come? You see, this is what I'm saying to you.
Well, I didn't know that.
Many meetings that involve many people on decision making.
But we're not talking about many different people. We're talking about my case specifically with Teresa Whalen making the phone call to you guys, okay?
I don't even think she spoke to him directly. I think she spoke to the presiding judge, who is her boss. I don't, as far as I know, I don't know that he had a direct conversation with her. So, I mean, I think you're speculating.
So right there, her belief is that Judge Whalen spoke to her boss, the presiding judge. At the time, that presiding judge was John Kelly. But the actual boss in Suffolk County is David Freundlich, who's the head of Suffolk County Family Court. And then also John Heinrichs is the administrative judge of Suffolk County. So if it was conveyed to either one of them, any one of those three, I should say, and then one of those three made the phone call to CPS, the corruption has even gone higher than what is obvious to this recording. The fact that the county attorney was involved in the decision-making process shows that the county attorney is now getting more information about the case than is even justified. Now, yes, the county attorney represents CPS. However, we're still talking about a child protective services. No allegation of my child being with me on this day. In fact, being as all my visitation is supervised, it would have been very obvious if he was. With that said, the real question now becomes, how high up is the corruption? Is it not just Teresa and Thomas Whalen and John Rouse and Judge Tony Beam? Is it as high up as John Heinrichs, the head of Suffolk County, the administrative judge? is he or has he suggested or approved or informed all the other judges to make an example out of me? Apparently, CArleen Thorn thinks that she didn't speak to Miss Whalen or anybody in CPS spoke to Miss Whalen. Apparently, it went through a different judge. So obviously, there's at least one other person involved. Possibly David Freundlich, possibly Judge Kelly, who's no longer a judge, but possibly even John Heinrichs, the head of Suffolk County. We'll finish the recording.
Because a decision was made that you don't like, that she jumped on the phone with
No. I've actually knew about this conversation prior to today's decision, so that's not a big deal.
How would you know what conversation Dennis has with anybody? Just because he had the information doesn't mean he had a conversation with her. How on earth would you know if Judge Whalen had a conversation with Dennis? If you're so confident, tell me how you know.
I will not tell you how I know anything. How did I know that? Wait, how did I know that Lauren Mankoff was arrested for beating up her husband? How do I know that when I called Kim Sonogram and told her that this is what I'm requesting, that it's not done, I'm going to go forward with this information to these people? How do I know that she was going to react the way she did? How do I know anything?
But just because Dennis has information doesn't mean that Judge Whalen called him up. And if you're telling me you confidently know that Judge Whalen called him up, then you tell me how you know. Don't make statements you're not going to back up, Duncan. And I've been nice to you all along. I'm done playing this game with you. You think we will owe you some kind of explanation? I told you why, and that's it. And it's done.
That's okay. That's okay.
Let's just be clear about one thing. CPS, the judges, and anybody involved in my case with the level of corruption owe me nothing. This entire thing is about one person, my son. And for them to take me away from him and punish him and hurt him and slow his developmental skills of bonding with his parent, bonding with other relatives, because actions taken by myself exposing what should have been exposed when a judge was originally brought to the bench, something that should be known about somebody who's making decisions, is unprecedented. For a family court judge and judges, and for CPS to knowingly, intentionally deprive a child of a loving parent, whether it's a mother or a father, is the most unthinkable action by people who swore to protect a child and uphold the laws of New York State. This is not about me. It never has been. This is about my son and his rights, and the damage done to him by the corrupt actions of Suffolk County judges, support magistrates, and CPS employees who are too scared and too weak to stand up to the corruption. I have stood up for over 5 years against the corruption on my own 2 feet, have never wavered my position once, and will not until I expose all the corruption and the judges and people behind it get punished for violating my son's rights. So nobody owes me anything. What I care about is my child and his rights being protected, and not allowing any other child to be treated, mishandled, and mistreated and deprived of a loving parent by any of the people involved in my case. And anybody who has information regarding the corruption of CPS, Suffolk County Family Court judges, Suffolk County Supreme Court judges for divorces in which children also suffer the loss of a parent need to speak up, post videos, send comments, as it is very clear of the only reason that I am in this position at this moment because I took an action and defended my position and asked a corrupt judge to back off. She hasn't. Her husband hasn't. They have used their political connections to punish me, to put me in jail, and will continue to do so until somebody exposes what they've done. So the remainder of the recording will now continue.
Right, it is okay.
It's fine.
But don't, I mean,
CArleen,
you're point, you're not listening. You're not listening to anything anyone tells you.
CArleen, our conversation today.
That was a poor decision you made, and that's why it happened. Regardless if Dennis was involved or not, all the other people in that room thought you made a poor decision. And regardless if Dennis was part of that or not, the same decision would have been came to. So, I've advocated for you left and right, and I think really at this point you need to just cut your losses and say you're going to deal with what the outcome is. You made a decision, and this is the consequence, and that's it. Deal with it. That's it. You did the decision. You hold the responsibility for that, Duncan. Nobody did it to you. Even if Judge Whaling called Dennis, guess what? She has the right to do that. She's an individual. She has the right. She's a taxpayer. You know what? We all, government employees, we answer taxpayers. She has the right to have that conversation with him.
That's amazing, because I'm a taxpayer, so I guess I have the same right to call Dennis Nowak as she did, right?
You absolutely do, but what I'm telling you is that you're reacting and you're making choices that are going to make you be seen in a light that is not favorable, and it's going to affect your progress moving forward. And I hate to see you do that when you've been doing so well. But you make those decisions, and you can insist whatever you want to insist. And you know what?
There's no decision being made. You understand this is an inquiry, this is questions, this is...
Well, you got an answer. I gave you an answer.
Okay.
Accept it. I told you how the decision was derived. I told you that. So just accept it and move on. And accept the responsibility and the piece you played in that. And that's what people look for you from Duncan. You don't do it. That's the problem. You know what? There is a level of culpability here, and there is a level of culpability in terms of why you and your child are involved in the system. And you know what? When you start to accept some of that, people will see you differently. And now you made a decision that undid some of the positives you did. And you know what? It's not the worst decision in the world. No one's taking you out and flogging you out back, but it is enough for people to say we need to proceed cautiously. And just accept that. You see what you did. You see how it could have been viewed threatening. You tell me that, but you don't accept what I tell you, that this was a decision that was made, and that's it, and it's not going to be changed. Even if he listens to your tape, he's not going to change his position at this point. Go do your mental health evaluation.
So basically, the county's position has changed. Unsupervised visitation is not warranted at this time.
Absolutely, because we are proceeding cautiously because you made a poor decision that could have been viewed threatening to someone in authority. Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I need to know. So thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Yep. Have a great evening.
You too.
Okay, so that's the end of the phone call, and you just heard her state that I made a poor decision which could have been viewed threatening to somebody in a position of authority. That, in a nutshell, is the sole reason that I am in this position now. Now, excuse me, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. This will be posted, and I will shorten the entire length of that recording down to the last final phrase. But this is the extended version, the entire recording. Feel free to just view that one and save that one. But this is the corruption faced in Suffolk County. Thank you for watching. Good luck to anyone dealing with Suffolk County Child Protective Services and corrupt judges.